Theta 1. It's great to see everybody this morning at the intersection. I'm curious to find out what it's like outside. I haven't been there yet, but I have really enjoyed some cooler mornings. But you know, it's getting a little warm in the afternoon for January, so I'm still, hoping daily for cooler mornings. So, but they're much better to walk in. It's great to see you here at the intersection. This month already is filled with events and wonders and so many different things that you could be a part of. It's just amazing. I'm excited about the 200 plus events that are through Dreamweek across the city that are cultural, meaningful conversations, dialogues, films. It's like a long list. As excited as I am, I'm glad that Dream Week, although it's more like Dream Month, is not a dream year because we couldn't keep up the pace of 200 plus events every month. I know I could. My days have been full. So I do want to focus us in, though, on why we're gathering today. And if everybody would mute, that would be lovely. Normally, anybody at the intersection, normally this is a briefing time. And it was interesting, I heard somebody last night talk about at the intersection, and he said, we come to those and we can even kind of see the underbelly of it all. And I thought, I never thought about it that way. I don't know if it's the underbelly, but we do get briefings on how things work, but also more importantly, how we can work more together. So out of our times, many collaboratives have formed, and there are two collaboratives in particular that really speak to today and what we're doing and why we're doing it, other than it's a kind of an exciting thing to do. The first collaborative I want to go to on my screen is the Story Portal. And not only are stories like, interesting or fun to listen to, they're also very important to the healing of community, the formation of community. As it says here, storytelling has the power to transform both the sharers and the listeners, to reshape together the narrative of what San Antonio is and what it can become. So we're in the second part of a storytelling series. So this January is very different from what we normally do. What you see here on screen is actually the neuroscience behind storytelling. We tried to put it into the portal, not in a way that sounds like neuroscience, but studies show that it increases our sense of human connection. It can turn off our stress response and flips on self-repair, can relax our nervous system, heal anxiety, anger, fear, loneliness. It reminds us that we're not alone. It can elicit empathy and cooperation. It can inspire us into action. Stories heal. Each of us, all of us, and it can help us to become even a better San Antonio. The other, so they are hosting us this morning by reminding us why we're doing this. It's not just because it is Dream Week. It's not just because it's a good idea, right? It's also because these are the things that create community and bring us together. The other collaborative that is hosting us this morning is the Healing Community Collaborative that equally came out of our mutual gathering. And we're going to listen quickly here to the mayor, but all of us, the pandemic, the school shooting in Uvalde, there are things that happen to us that we collectively experience. And that's what this portal's about, and this work of this collaborative. How do we heal as community? And storytelling is part of that. But back to our neuroscience here. This is how communities heal, these 10 steps. They're not rocket science. This is human science. Create safe spaces and people places, which is what we do at the intersection. Practice listening, naming the pain, so saying it out loud. We can build relationships. I know there are people who have been a part of intersection and didn't know each other before. To notice what's happening in our bodies. Breathing is important, and humor is one of the fastest ways, other than an oxygen mask, to get oxygen to the brain, to recognize our togetherness, be able to express what's going on inside and outside, and that as we be, feel, think together, that forms community. And this one here, just hate is not the opposite of love. But love includes hate, but is much more interested in growth, wisdom, and listening. So that's kind of the space that we've been invited into by these collaboratives. And we have two courageous guys with us this morning, Herman and Lou. And they're going to work from their heart out of courage to tell us a bit about their stories. I'm going to gently lead them through questions. I will tell you one insight about both of them, but they don't know each other, I don't think, on this other level, but they both serve in the Sane Society Collaborative. So they are both interested, right, in violence prevention and healing in that manner. So they have something in common, but we're going to explore a little bit different what they might have in common as humans. So thank you, Lou and Herman, for saying yes to this. We could even talk about how they said yes to this, so they're very brave. And maybe, Bill, we could put that on a speaker view with both of them as they converse. Sure. So just briefly, guys, if you could think for a moment, and I invite everybody to do this about themselves. So we're doing kind of simultaneous healing here, but from what you think other people's perceptions of you in the world and how you move through the world in your roles. And I did put in the notification how Lou serves in the world with the federal government. And I did put in the notification, Herman, that you lead St. John's Baptist. So everybody's got that. How do you think, briefly, people perceive you in that world? They see you walking around. What do you think their perception is of you? Which one of you might want to go first? Yeah. Herman, turn on your sound, man. So we're good. There he is.
That's a good question. I guess for me, I guess it would be mixed feelings. I guess when someone see me, be it my military career, those who would oppose violence and war might not think too well of me being a military person, or even in clergy. There'll be those who would love persons of faith and what that means to a community. And then there'll be those the days in which we live today where maybe there's not a lot of tolerance for the church. And so I think there'd be mixed views from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Lou? How do you think people perceive you? And let's unmute you. There you go.
Well, it's a good question.
We could ask the audience what their perceptions are.
Well, I would imagine working for the federal government, there's not a lot of trust, you know, and frankly, that's some of the challenges that I deal with on a daily basis. Is why would a federal employee be offering me free stuff? So, and then also, you know, like Herman, being part of the military, you know, its perceptions, both good and bad. But but I think that from a place of trust, from some aspect, knowing that there's this vehicle or this mechanism of where I get my resources and where my work's from, but me as a person is all about compassion and really the work, doing the work. So
the next question is what I call the basics. Just like, what are the basics of your life? Like, where were you born? You know, maybe what your parents did, you know, like where you grew up, what, you know, just the basics, you know.
Well, Louisiana guy myself. I'm born and raised in Louisiana, outside of the city of New Orleans. So I'm from the NO in the sense I born in Kenner, Louisiana. So New Orleans Airport is actually in Kenner. And so I would say I'm a New Orleans guy, born into just a hardworking family. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I'm number 8 of 14. So I had 7 sisters ahead of me, and then there were 7 boys, and I'm the oldest boy. My dad worked 2 jobs all of my life. Mom was at home raising the kids. We were in a common community, a blue-collar community, hardworking people, prideful people of integrity, Christian community for the most part. That was that's a humble beginning for me, born into a loving household. What we had, we valued, appreciated. We were taught to love ourselves, love people. My mom was a big-hearted person. So was my dad. I can see my call in the ministry influenced, no doubt, by the way I was raised. That's pretty much it. Of course, joined the military at 19 years old, just a few weeks, matter of fact, after my father expired. I buried him in 74, November and December 74. I joined the Air Force at 19 years old. Did 20 years in the Air Force. Became a minister during that time. I was a medic, so I was in dental services while I was in the Air Force, and called a ministry during the late part of my military career. Now I've been pastoring for 28, going on 29 years pastoring. Wow. Went to Wayland Baptist and, of course, Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth for Master in Divinity to inform me about how to, be fruitful and impactful and true to the calling that I believe is on my life today. Wow.
And now I can hear that Louisiana thing now. Yeah. I can hear that. So Lou, tell us, and guys too, if you have a question after hearing the other talk, you can ask that question too. So Lou, your basics.
So I grew up I was born in Holland, Michigan. Moved here 3-4 years ago. I am a second generation. So my father was a Vietnamese War refugee. He served in the South Vietnamese Army. My mother is Puerto Rican, and she migrated from Puerto Rico to Holland, Michigan, because my grandfather worked the farms, the fruit farms in Holland, Michigan. I grew up with 3 sisters. I also have a half brother, 2 half brothers and 2 half sisters. I'll get to that in a little bit. And then my upbringing wasn't as, how do I say, everything wasn't kind of perfect for me. So I myself actually dropped out of high school in 10th grade, and got my way to college, and then I was out on my own when I was about 14, 15 years old. So in college, was actually homeless for about a year, and then had this turning point to join the military, and in the military is where I found my purpose. So so was in the military. I'm still in the military on the reserve side. I'm actually the state emergency preparedness liaison officer for the state of Texas on my reserve side. But in the military, I found kind of the need to help others, right? And the ability to stand up for others. So so that kind of drove me into my Homeland Security, emergency preparedness, security background or career field, which now I'm fully invested in, right? So the great thing about my job now is that I get to help others with the knowledge that I've obtained, and it doesn't cost anybody anything. It's all free, and it's almost consulting in a sense, but doesn't cost anybody anything. So but yeah, so my father was a war refugee, and why I have a half brother, half sister. I met them in 2012. I was able to go back to Vietnam and meet them for the first time. But my father, being a war refugee, his town was bombed and he lost communication with his family there. So for years he thought they were dead. And then he married my mother. Lo and behold, they were still alive. They reconnected. And then, long story short, I was able to connect with them, and now I've got a relationship with my siblings in Vietnam. So that is my story.
Well, there's several things of connection that I hear, but one of the most obvious between the two of you is like military service, right? But you've already kind of moved into my next question, and maybe Lou, you might want to expand on your comment. Was there a moment, and you mentioned that when you went into the military, it was that turning point where you found your purpose in life. So my question is, was there a moment? For some of us, there are many moments, but you've already indicated a moment that kind of shifted your life. Could you tell us maybe a little bit about how that shifted your life? How did being in the military help you find your purpose? And so, Herman, you can be thinking if there was a moment of turning for you. What was about it?
So the moment was I had returned from basic training and was in my my first unit, and I met a gentleman by the name of John Liliberte. He's a warrant officer at the time, and I was kind of under his wing for a while, and I learned a lot from him. But through that, I started getting into the field of intelligence and human intelligence, and I had a real knack for it. And I just found myself doing things that I never thought I was capable of in the military, right? So taking on roles, leading others, that I had never done, coming from the household, coming from my background, right? And it was really an eye-opening experience. Just being in charge and leading and guiding missions and mission tasks for the military that just completely opened my eyes to my full capability.
Hmm. Hmm. And Herman, was there a turning moment, or maybe even want to comment a little bit about what you heard just from Lou? You hear connections in there?
In terms of the
Purpose
humble
of life.
humble beginning, the seeing people, the importance of family. For me, I think with the military in some ways helped me with that. It allowed me to meet all kinds of people. Inclusion happens in the military. And so being from Louisiana, from Kennerlos, now I'm thrown into this world where I'm meeting people from all over the country. When I entered the military in '74, the Vietnam War was coming to an end. So they were bringing soldiers back from Vietnam. I'm 19 years old, seeing the horror of war. And so I'm in this new world. I'm interacting with different people, and learning that we're all the same. You might be in the suburbs, you might have more education, but we all dealing with the same things. But I think one of the turning points for me in terms of humanity and community and the work that I do now as a pastor, it was that early in my ministry, I was in New Orleans with Cops and Metro Alliance. We had gone to meet Dr. James Combs, the father of liberation theology.
Yeah.
And he was talking about this book that he had written about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And he said that a good Christian was a combination of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. That really got my attention.
Mhm.
And so over lunch, sitting at the table with Dr. James Combs, he made a comment. He said, give me the Jesus in the Bible, not the westernized Jesus. And I think that began to reshape my thought about ministry and seeing a God in scripture who's not only trying to get people to heaven, but he also want them to have a little heaven on earth, right? And so, in scripture, you get to see this Christ who's able to see people and hear people. And I think my passion grew. I think I always had it, even in the military. I would complain about any injustice where I thought somebody was being treated different. Those things was happening there. But I think the call to preach and that morning, that afternoon with James Combs, and then following my brother Cornell West, who helped me understand that we have to love our crooked neighbors with our crooked hearts. So it just opened up scripture for me, and it helped me to see that in ministry, that God of Bible is really concerned about community, humanity. It makes sense. Even this weekend that we talking about MLK weekend, Dr. King was a Baptist preacher. His theology informed him. And so all of what he did was as a result of his faith. That's what I believe, that his faith in the Jesus, that Palestinian Jew that he see in scripture, had an interest for helping those who were oppressed. And so it just began to make sense to me that justice is what love looked like in the public. Those kind of things begin to make sense easier for me. And I think that weekend, I think that sit down with James Combs really helped me as a young preacher, just really starting out pastoring, helped me to see that yes, we want people to go to heaven, but God is concerned about things happening right now on the earth. He see the least of these, the voiceless, the underserved. And so that I think that my passion, my juice is just from, I think that morning got me going.
Both powerful. And it's 8:26. I'm going to give the next question so these guys can think, but we're going to make a soft transition towards the 8:30 minute. But this has been so rich. I'm feeling things too, and I hope that's what happens, right? When we're sharing story, we discover our common humanity. We discover touchstones that we might have experienced in different ways, but yet, oh my gosh, I know what that feels like, what it thinks like, how it turns me. So my last question to both of you is, what your dream is for the future. And I think that dream, I want to encourage you to go as deep as possible for our city, for yourself, for our planet, for the world. Like what is your dream for the future, especially since we're in the month we're in? I'm going to give you a moment to think about that because we're at 8:27 and we do our best to do a soft closure. I noticed that we've tended to move more into 8:45, but soft closure for those who do need to leave at 8:30 because they have other things on their schedule. I want to thank you for being with us. Next week, our conversation is going to be between Maria Villagomez, who is the Deputy City Manager, and Beverly Watts Davis, who leads West Care. And so I invite you all to come back next week to hear that. This Sunday is the MLK Interfaith service. It's at 4:30 at St. Gerard's Catholic. You can find out more at Dreamweek/events. I'll put that in chat. I don't know if you knew, Herman, but Dr. Cornell West is going to be here during Dreamweek.
Oh,
did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
You need to go because you have to get tickets. It's off the top of my head, so you're going to have to double check. It's January 22nd, I believe.
Okay.
It's noon to 2. And I believe it's at San Antonio College, but you can find out all that information at the Dreamweek schedule. I'm going to be there. I wouldn't miss it.
And it's actually on January 25th.
There you go. Thank you for checking that. 5th.
25th.
Okay.
The Wednesday.
Okay.
So can you put that link in chat, Karen, for everybody? They can go to Dreamweek. The other thing I want to mention, and then we're going to come back to hearing their dreams. What was the other thing? Oh, I put in chat. I've got some tickets to give away. I've got 2 Spurs tickets for MLK Compassion Night this Sunday night, and a ticket to join me for breakfast tomorrow morning at the opening breakfast for Dreamweek. So you'd have to be available like 7:30 a.m. to go downtown. So scroll back up in chat and you'll see how you can get into that kind of somewhat of a drawing raffle. And if nobody enters, Bill and his spouse will get the Spurs tickets because he was courageous enough to step up as judge. And Ilsa will be going to breakfast with me because she was equally as courageous. So there you go. So I'm going to come back to our folks leading the conversation today. So Herman and Lou, was it Bill that, I'm sorry, I just looked. Was it Bill who was judging? Somebody answer me. Yes, it's Bill. Okay, sorry about that. Which of you would like to go first? Herman, Lou, what's your dream, your deepest dream for the future?
I would just sum it up in 2 words: justice and peace.
And then what does that mean and look like for you in the world? What would that look like?
Well, it's seeing immigrants at the border. It's seeing the injustice in our criminal justice system. Is looking for truth in a society versus lies. It's loving our neighbors. And so, it's just the love of God is seeing the redemptive value in everyone.
It makes me think, Herman, about the Hebrew word for justice and righteousness is the same word, tzedak. And we could go into a whole long conversation, but when you start to break that apart, it's justice is living in right relationship. We're truth speaking, right? Where our eyes can see how things are impacting human beings, It's not about thinking our way into a new way of being. We have to act it and be it. And we would be a different world, right? If we were using those eyes all the time. So, Lou, what's your deepest dream?
Man, I think Herman kind of hit it on the head. But I will add stronger community. I just feel that we have kind of stepped from our strong communities from the past. And there's something that a lot of the work that I do is to strengthen those that have, I guess, not the resources or the tools to equip themselves or educate themselves on how to better secure themselves. So, and one of the things that I've noticed is just having those relationships within the community and almost policing ourselves. Being open to what's, doing what's right and sharing. I at every brief that I have, I always give the slogan that DHS has, which is Homeland security starts with hometown security. And I really do believe behind that slogan, because it really is ourselves. If we could do a better job at communicating, identifying, really standing up and saying no to what's wrong, then I think things could get better. I really do. But I feel like there's a disconnect among, throughout the community a bit. People kind of live in their world this day and age, and forget to knock on your neighbor's door and see how things are going, kind of thing. So kind of, yeah, peace, justice, for sure. I totally agree with everything that Herman said, and maybe that's our military background. But yeah, also stronger relationships within our own community.
That's another one of those words, because it's a compound word of common unity. Our community, our common unity. It makes me think too of Bridges to Care and that mutual effort that's come out of this work, but forming, groups of congregations and schools in near geographic proximity, and creating community and that caring for each other. I would even take that slogan, which I'd never heard, but I would take it one step further and just drop the town even, but that security in our home. So, everything starts here. This is about this is the only thing, and I have to really work at it, but this is about the only thing, this person here, that I have the real opportunity to do some difference with, right? I can't change everybody else, but, and I have to work at doing this, right? But that whole sense of we have what we need, right? It's how do we put that together for the common good, for our common unity, for our community? You know, how do we care for ourselves? How do we care for each other, our neighbor? We could have a show of hands. How many people know their neighbors, just the ones that immediately surround the house? The one right across the street, the one catty corner, the one next door, and the one behind. How many of us know those people? Just those. They're Ilsa. See, that's why you're judged this morning for breakfast. So I wonder if the two of you have any more comments that you would like to add, or things that you heard from each other. Think about that. I think Kendra she did raise her hand and then she went away. You guys have any comments to end with, or a question for each other? Thoughts?
No, I don't.
Mhm. You're getting lots of kudos in the chat box. I don't know if you know that, but you are.
I think it's human nature. You have to feel rooted and you have to feel you belong to your community, belong to your church, belong to your school. That is just human, that you want to be part of. And so many of our kids are missing that root. And that's where we sow where we belong. And so they need to feel that. And so how collectively as a community, because it takes that village, do we connect them? Because they need that. We have to all sow them. They're our future.
Mhm. Any other thoughts or comments that you're just really wanting to share? Anyone? Thank you, Elsa.
And I'll jump in. I have just a comment for Herman, and maybe he can just expand on it. But he, in one of his comments, he said that he used the phrase, "There's a lot of inclusion in the military." And I just wonder, that stuck out to me a little bit. And I just wonder if maybe he could expand on that and see if maybe Lou, I don't know if you have a similar feeling and similar view on that.
Oh yeah, I joined the military in '74. So, in the late '60s and early '70s, we began to see integration. Up until that time, I went to a Black elementary school. And so it was when it was time for me to go into middle school was when Louisiana really began to integrate schools. And so now we began to go to school with white kids. And so that was a new thing. They were closing Black high schools, middle schools, and all of the Black kids were being bused to white schools. And so that was that happens, in middle school for me. So in the military was where I seen, that people got along better, it seemed, in the military. There was, people of every hue, in the military. So we were a community, you're away from home. If you have an overseas assignment, I didn't get that early in my career, but you have to get along. You got to have a community with Americans when you're on foreign soil, so the military was where, I guess for me, you begin to take the time to see people as people. We all are the same, and you saw that inclusiveness, of every make of people, when you're in the military, you sent to a hostile area, you depending on your white brother, your Asian brother. I mean, it's not a place for racism and for those things to get in the way of the mission. And so it's a different community than, as we would say, living with civilians. The military was a different vibe, and so it allowed me to see past race and just see people.
They say in the military that the skin of the color of our skin is green, all of us. So,
You know,
Martha Ann wrote in chat, could our country have a type of Peace Corps doing what Herman is saying, building up the beloved community? What? I would say just with the inclusive nature of it, it's already building some of that. And we aren't always seeing that, our perceptions, right? We aren't always seeing that or recognizing it. Beverly has her hand up.
To both of you, all your stories. Well, I think I'm sorry.
Kendra Lee says we do have it. It's called AmeriCorps. Beverly, did we lose you? Your hand's up. There's also Emma. I don't know if Emma's trying to get those 2 tickets, but she's like, Coach.
My daughter, yes.
Sorry,
Coach Pop shows compassion often, but I remember an article that he blesses people with large tips of a meal, giving tip of 5,000. What a blessing. So look at that. Emma's working on those tickets. Anyway, Beverly, are you there now?
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. What I wanted to be able to say is both of you gentlemen have done a wonderful job of forming community where you are at, listening to your stories. Can you give us 3 things or 1 thing or 2 things or 3 things that you would give advice in terms of how people can form community wherever they are?
1 to 2 things on forming community. One that quickly comes to mind is don't be afraid of Lou because he works for the federal government. He does really great work with our congregations, but you've got to ask him. So Lou, make sure you put your email in the chat so people can.
all right. I could kick off this one. So a lot of the work that I do amongst organizations is, even with the faith-based community, what we're doing here is amazing. I don't think, I always say San Antonio's forward leaning because of the relationships we built here. And some of it spawns off of the military, the military presence that's here as well. So, but things like this, where those who don't know have a platform to come learn, right? With communities, events, even structuring, San Antonio is structured in a fantastic way because it has so many subdivisions and neighborhoods that I think allow for, events or even that kind of collective coming together. But from a local government standpoint, it's also part of our organizations being part of those communities as well. So law enforcement really, if that's the neighborhood that you work, meet the people that are there. The same with federal partners, understanding and knowing, the structures of the cities and things like that we're supporting. Having better formal structures on how we can support those and blend in to support as well. So I hope that answers.
It does. Thank you.
So the question had to do with building community. I would think, number one, I think valuing people, valuing all the people in the community, a value for them. And we've said a number of times, I think this morning, seeing and hearing people. I think about Nehemiah when he heard about back home in Jerusalem that the city was in a ruin and that the people were in ruins. And so even though he was in the king's palace, that still touched him. He still valued those people back home. And when he went there, and before he met with the nobles and entertained what was going on, he sat, so I think strengthening community, we have to value people, from the least to the greater, that they have the same value. I think that is so important. Sometimes I remember old interview I seen with Malcolm X. He was on one of those talk shows, late night shows, and the question he was asked, well, what do you people want? And he said, we want what y'all want, good schools, safe communities. And so I think valuing people is a start in terms of building strong and healthy communities. See those who don't have a seat at the table, and when they're not there, speak up for them too.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
It's so good. And so it's 8:47. I'm not paying attention. I've got so kind of drawn into the conversation itself. So we've gone even 2 minutes over our close time. So I want to thank both of you, really, Herman and Lou. It can take us a long time, right? When we get to meet somebody new before we really, especially like when we're working with people, before we really hear their backstory, right? And to do that publicly. So thank you for your willingness to do that this morning. And thank you all for being here. I hope many come back next week to hear Maria Villagomez and Barbara. So we'll see you next week. Before we close,